So I'll do a little good almost afternoon, everybody. Thank you again for coming here for our second Caregiver Noontime Knowledge session. If you haven't yet already, and we have people both in the room with us and on Zoom, thank you so much. So if you are joining us in the room, if you haven't yet had a chance yet to scan this QR code and get yourself checked in, if you have a phone that isn't compatible with QR codes, I do have a computer out at the check-in table that we can have you fill out the form out there. But I do need people to check both in and out. It's especially important if you are seeking CEUs for this session. People with us on Zoom, as soon as you've logged in and joined us, we've got your information there as far as your check-in and check-out times. Everybody, oh, let me go back to it. There, okay. So give everybody a second to do that. While you're doing that, for our in-person people, if you need to step out at any time to use the restrooms, it's left out of this room, and just before you hit the lobby on the right are the restrooms. There is also a drinking fountain there with some bottle refilling stations if you have a water bottle you'd like to refill. So that is there. Everybody in the room got the QR code? All right. Yeah, we've got a computer out at the desk. We can get you checked in real quick. So a couple of things for our virtual attendees to know. Please make sure that your name is visible and it's not iPad 247. So we can make sure, again, especially if you are receiving CEUs, especially important that we know you are here so we can get you the credit you deserve. So check those 3 dots by your screen and choose rename and make sure that is your name. Also make sure you are muted and your camera is off and have your chat window open. I will also drop the links for checking in and out and our evaluation at the end to you, and we'll have some different things in the chat. So make sure those things are done for our virtual attendees. And with that, I am ready to hand over the mic to our presenter today, Ms. Judy Bearer. Thank you so much.
Hello. So I'm Judy Bearer. I do work here at Direction Home, but I am doing this on my lunch and some vacation time as a volunteer for the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration. So I just wanted to clarify that. And so I'll just get started. So forgive me if I read this because I could talk about this topic all day and I need to stay on track. And forgive me also if I punctuate while I'm talking because I do a lot of talk to text. So I appreciate everyone being here and having me here today because and being interested in learning more about FTD, which is frontotemporal degeneration or frontotemporal dementia. But I am going to say FTD because that is a long word and we don't have a lot of time. So I am going to present the PowerPoint from the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration, which is a national nonprofit, and it's the only one focusing solely on FTD. And I encourage anyone interested in learning more to visit their website, which will be in the PowerPoint. And they have so much information, free webinars, educational materials for families and people with FTD. They have a helpline. They're a resource often listed by the local Alzheimer's associations to help partner in supporting people with this relatively rare diagnosis. I'm not an expert on the topic. In fact, I was quite the opposite, even as a social worker with a psych degree and over 30 years in the field. And the other dementias was a term I zoned out when I heard. Another form of memory loss, right? Then my own mother started to sound like this. As I try to get this to play. Okay, Blake.
Hello, I'm home. You are home. Sounds good. So let me know. Bye.
I knew something was wrong. That was a couple years into her diagnosis or into her symptoms. So Dr. Google led me to a term that I'd never heard of before, which was primary progressive aphasia, and the rest is history. Lori knows more than she probably wants to about my story. So does Teresa Nundowski, said your name wrong, Matt Reed, Abby, Barb with Dementia Friends, who you heard from last month, Karen and Mary from the Alzheimer's Association, and now you. I appreciate the chance to be here today and tell you about this rare disease, and I wanted to give you a little background about why I'm here. Not just for me, but for all of the people I have met throughout my journey who have been touched by this disease. I hope you learn something and get your CEU. I personally only ask one thing, that when you hear "and the other dementias," that you think of me today and how FTD is one of those other dementias. Dementia is not always memory loss. My mom didn't live with memory loss, but boy, did she live with dementia. So today's objectives are to describe how FTD differs from other dementias, define the FTD subtypes, as well as the common symptoms, and list supports and services to assist families. And this is how you're going to get your CEU. So many of us understand the most common cause of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, but there are a number of important ways that FTD is very different from Alzheimer's disease and other common causes of dementia. FTD is complicated by the fact that it is a family of disorders which can begin with very different symptoms. Hopefully, by the end of our presentation, you'll have a clearer understanding of these related disorders. What is dementia? Many of you feel that you already know the answer to this question. Some think of dementia as a memory problem or a disease that primarily affects older adults. But this is not true of all diseases that cause dementia. Many people can present with dementia in their 40s, 50s, and even young as 21. Dementia can be present without memory loss as a symptom. The National Institute of Health defines dementia as the loss of cognitive functioning, thinking, remembering, and reasoning, and behavioral abilities to such an extent that it interferes with a person's daily life and activities. Dementia can be thought as an umbrella term, which can be caused by a number of diseases or conditions. There are numerous causes of dementia. Some of the most common are Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body dementia, which we're learning about next month, frontotemporal degeneration, and vascular dementia. The term mixed dementia is used when a person has impairment caused by more than one type of disease. The signs, symptoms, causes, age of onset, and prognosis differ based on the specific disease. How the disease progresses is also different for each person. Alzheimer's disease is the most well-known cause of dementia. We don't have perfect data on the prevalence of each type, but it's estimated that Alzheimer's disease makes up about 60 to 80% of all cases of dementia, with nearly 6 million people in the US currently affected, which explains why we know the most about it. Vascular dementia is also very common and often occurs along with Alzheimer's disease, but is caused by damage from a stroke or other vascular complications. Lewy body dementia makes up about 20% of all cases of dementia, and it presents with problem solving, motor symptoms, and hallucinations. Frontotemporal degeneration is less common than vascular dementia and Lewy body dementia. There are estimated to be about 60,000 cases in the US, but FTD is often initially misdiagnosed. This form of dementia tends to have a much earlier onset of symptoms, often in the 40s or 50s. We think about half of the cases of dementia may actually involve more than one cause. And I'll just add that my experience as a volunteer, many of the volunteers have spouses, they're my age, who have dementia. It's a very different population, and that's why I feel so passionate about this. So in this section, we'll go a bit deeper into FTD and the specific variants. PET scan brain imaging, and I'm reading this, so I don't think I'm any expert. PET scan brain imaging of different types of dementia shows where the primary damage has focused. PET is a functional image technique that uses a radioactive substance known as radiotracers to visualize and measure changes to organs within the body in this instance, the brain. What is a PET scan used to diagnose? In general, PET scans may be used to evaluate organs and/or tissues for the presence of disease or other conditions. PET may also be used to evaluate the function of organs, such as the heart or brain. The most common use of PET is in the detection of cancer and the evaluation of cancer treatment. Amyloid plaque and tau tangles associated PET scans are more commonly used in Alzheimer's disease research. What does the blue mean in a PET scan? What do different colors mean on the PET scan? In general, red and yellow are areas of very high metabolic activity, and the green area is moderate metabolic activity, and the blue area is low metabolic activity. With this slide, the front of the brain is at the top of each brain image. FTD sees significantly lower activity, specifically in the frontal lobes. Larger black areas reflect spaces in the brain, ventricles, and atrophy. So here's a brief history of FTD, and when I'm reading through the dates, it makes me realize why, even though I have a psych degree, I never learned about it. So we'll go Arnold Pick in 1851 to 1924. He was a psychiatrist from Austria-Hungary who first described the clinical features of an FTD disorder. In 1892, it was studied and reported on the clinical symptoms of a patient named August H., who suffered from severe aphasia or loss of language skills due to temporal degeneration and was later thought to be the first published case of primary progressive aphasia. In 1911, Dr. Alzheimer described an FTD pathology and termed them pick bodies. And then nothing until 1993, which explains that I graduated from college in 1991, and I never even heard of this. So in 1993, there was clinical criteria for the behavioral variant of FTD. And in 1997, FTD-associated proteins and gene variants were discovered. And in the 2000s, further study and confirmation of FTD-associated proteins and gene variants. And 2015, greater funding for clinical trials in FTD at multiple center locations. So that's all very recent. So what is FTD? Frontotemporal degeneration is a type of dementia caused by a family of related diseases or disorders. The symptoms, here we go again, typically begin between 45 and 64, although the age of onset ranges from 21 to 80. It's a leading cause of dementia for those under 60. It's also what Bruce Willis has. FTD initially presents with different symptoms depending on where the disease starts in the brain. The most common early symptoms impact behavior, personality, and communication. Think of my mom's message. Unfortunately, it can take 3.6 years on average to be seen by a neurospecialist to make an FTD diagnosis. Pretty much every one of the volunteers that I have had contact with, they know what Google diagnosis means. They have gone through years of trying to find an answer. Because most of the time when people are younger, they're healthier. So they aren't going to the doctor. They aren't thinking this is something, this isn't dementia. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so during this time, the person may be misdiagnosed and undergoing ineffective treatments for some other condition. Because of the typical younger onset of FTD, many persons with FTD or their care partners can still be working with their medical insurance related to employment, still paying off a mortgage or other loans, be saving for retirement, paying for college for their children, or have kids still in the home. And all of these typical midlife activities can be turned upside down by the onset of FTD symptoms and ultimately by an FTD diagnosis. Here at Direction Home, most of our services are for people who are 60 and older, not for the people with FTD. So you may wonder why these specific changes or symptoms happen. The frontal lobes are located in the front of the brain, one on the right hemisphere and one in the left hemisphere. The frontal lobe in the left hemisphere is critical for motor control of speech. The The frontal lobe is also responsible for judgment, personality, inhibitions, and a person's affect. This is why FTD, which starts in this part of the brain, can change personality. With behavioral variant FTD, noticeable behaviors and personality changes are often the first sign of the diseases seen by the family. The frontal lobe also focuses on initiating action and physical movement. The temporal lobes are located on the sides of the brain, almost directly under your temples. This area includes auditory, olfactory, vestibular, visual, and linguistic functions. This area is also associated with language processing, whether it's written or spoken. The left lobe is primarily involved in understanding or comprehending language. Frontotemporal degeneration is not caused by a single disease, but caused by a cluster of complex disorders. There are three main clinical presentations of FTD: initial changes in personality and behavior, language and communication, or movement and motor skills. The names of the FTD subtypes or variants are listed here. Symptoms vary among people with the same diagnosis. One person's experience with FTD can look very different from another person. Let's take a closer look at these subtypes. Common symptoms of behavioral variant are apathy. It's one of the more common first symptoms. It's typically seen as an indifference or lack of interest in previously meaningful activities. Sitting in front of the TV, lack of interest to get out of bed, change clothes, etc. But typically, apathy is not accompanied by sadness or grief. I'll give you an example. One of the ladies that I have talked to, I was telling her my husband and I were going on a trip for our 30th anniversary to Hawaii. She said she and her husband went when they were in their mid-40s, and he sat on the balcony and ate potato chips the whole time and had no interest in going anywhere. Behavioral disinhibition, a loss or lack of restraint based on social norms, leading to inappropriate behavior and impulsivity. The person may make uncharacteristic, rude, or offensive comments or ignore other people's personal space. The person may start shoplifting or reckless spending. We talked about having credit cards earlier before we started here. Touching strangers or inappropriate sexual behavior can occur. Aggressive outbursts that were not common before can be one of the symptoms. I know when my mom got more advanced, she hugged everybody. Not so bad from a 5'4" little white-haired lady, but if you're 6'4" and 46 years old and you start hugging people, they kind of don't like it. Loss of sympathy or empathy, loss of warmth, empathy, or concern for others when this was not typical before. Compulsive ritualistic behaviors, new behaviors or routines that are performed over and over. Changes in eating habits or diet, excessive, compulsive, or inappropriate eating and drinking, and other pronounced changes in dietary preferences. Sometimes people gain a lot of weight. Deficits in executive functioning. Another symptom can be poor decision-making, judgment, problem-solving, and organizational skills. A lot of times people lose their jobs. A diagnosis of probable behavioral variant FTD requires 3 of the above clinical symptoms, as well as a significant functional decline in imaging results, which confirm relevant presentations via brain scans, such as MRI, CT, PET, or SPECT, which also explains why it takes so long to diagnose, because it takes a while for it to progress to that point. And then you have to get a diagnosis, and then disability, and then Medicare, and you can see why it's a problem if you're under 65. Primary progressive aphasia is characterized by progressive loss of oral and written language skills. And no, you can't always just use a communication board. Comprehension and language expression may be affected. The non-fluent agrammatic variant of PPA primarily affects speech production. That's what my mom had, so you heard what that sounds like. Individuals begin to lose proper grammar, especially with their ability to use small connecting words, but have preserved language and comprehension for specific items and objects. This causes speech to become effortful and hesitant, and sentence length becomes progressively shorter and truncated. And I think I gave you a pretty good example of what that sounds like. Writing and language comprehension may be affected in the same manner. The semantic variant is primarily a loss of word meaning or anomia. Here, the meaning of specific words is lost, and both comprehension of the word and the ability to retrieve the name of an object may be lost. Difficulty reading or writing words that don't follow pronunciation or spelling rules. And can you imagine in the English language we have any of those? The person retains fluent speech and proper grammar, and word substitution errors are common. In the logopenic version of PPA, with this variant, speech is slow, but grammar and comprehension are less affected. A person may lose the ability to repeat phrases or sentences. Sound substitutions are also seen as in the wrong word is used when rhymes with the intent. I'll try that again. Sound substitutions are also seen as in the wrong word is used, which rhymes with the intended word. So here we have a couple of motor disorders, which are really not thought of as dementia, but it is caused by a deterioration of the brain that affects your daily functioning. So corticobasal syndrome, or CBS, and progressive supranuclear palsy, and I forget which one it is, but Linda Ronstadt, showing my age, has one of these. Both cause movement or motor deficits, which are the dominant clinical symptoms early in the disease and at points of diagnosis. Because of this, they are sometimes referred to as atypical Parkinsonism. Both of these disorders tend to begin deeper in the brain. With CBS, movement deficits often begin on one side of the body, but eventually both sides are affected. Changes may also occur which bring about slow or no movement, stiffness or resistance to movement, abnormal posture to do uncontrolled muscle contractions. And some CBS patients may present with behavioral variant symptoms first. Persons with PSP can show these symptoms. The earliest visual changes are a decrease in the ability to voluntarily move the gaze of the eyes vertically, downward and upward. Frequent falls, postural and gait instability, and stiffness or resistance to movement. Some PSP patients can also show clinical signs of behavioral variant FTD prior to the motor deficits. Some of the symptoms common to behavioral variant FTD or PPA may also be seen with CBS and PSP. These include word finding difficulty, shorter sentences, apathy, and impulsivity. The discovery in 2011 that the C9orf72 gene mutation can cause both FTD and ALS. Unfortunately, sometimes both of these diseases occur in a single person. This changed a long-held belief that ALS is purely a movement disorder and that FTD is purely a cognitive or behavioral form of dementia. Symptoms of frontotemporal degeneration, commonly behavioral variant, are often noticed first, with motor symptoms identified later. And this is a very, many of the people that I volunteer with have family members have this genetic mutation, and it's just a very strong focus. So I'm going to talk about the effects on the families. And again, because people are often younger. So a few years ago, the AFTD did a study on the costs of FTD with responses from nearly 700 care partners and caregivers. It was published in the journal Neurology in 2017, and it concluded that the average annual costs associated with FTD are roughly double those of Alzheimer's disease. 12 months prior to diagnosis, overall household income ranged from $75,000 to $99,000. 12 months later, after diagnosis, the income declined to the $50,000 to $59,000 range. 1 in 3 caregivers stops working after a loved one's FTD diagnosis. And I'll also say, if you think those are kind of high income numbers, probably because a lot of people who are underserved and in marginal populations don't even have this on their radar. And that's one of the things that we need to do, is be more aware of these kind of things, because most of the people that are diagnosed with this are probably more middle upper class because they have the resources and the knowledge, and it affects them in a way that they notice it. So get off my soapbox there. This is why I said I'm reading instead of talking. So common symptoms include decreased judgment and financial decision-making, which can compound financial problems. Also, a lot of people are, I think divorce lawyers need to be very aware of this diagnosis, because I think probably the midlife crisis might sometimes be FTD. That's just my thought. So FTD caregiving can also require significant role changes in the family. There may be children, teens, or young adults still at home, or the care partner may be already caring for an aging parent. So to summarize, an AFTD or an FTD diagnosis can create complex and difficult financial and social needs for the family. And unlike many other dementias, FTD frequently occurs in middle age, meaning that there are often children at home. When any parent faces a serious illness, their children and teens need support and flexibility, as well as lots of love and understanding. Few situations can be as stressful on a family as losing a parent to a degenerative brain disease. As FTD progresses, it creates ever-changing obstacles and unique challenges for families to manage. Since FTD has no FDA-approved treatment, caring for a person with FTD requires a team approach to manage the complex, ever-changing symptoms of a person. Care teams can consist of, and we all know this, family, friends, community support, a medical team, your primary care doctor, the neurologist, the nursing staff, social workers, therapists, speech and occupational therapists, elder law, medical advance directives, power of attorneys, guardianship, disability qualification, and Medicare, Medicaid as needed, as well as palliative care and hospice. For both the person with FTD and the care partner, having others involved in providing care and making difficult care decisions is key. Support groups provide a resource or an outlet and a place to collect and share your thoughts with others who understand. Having people who understand the diagnosis as well as the disease provides a safe place for caregivers to discuss their feelings. So I do know that we have support groups here. That's why I've tried to keep in touch with our family support caregiver coordinator and with the Alzheimer's Association so that they can help connect people to support groups that are available. So I've talked a little about the areas of the brain first impacted by FTD and how that impacts a person's initial symptoms. Now I'm going to go a little deeper into the diagnosis, treatment, and disease management. On average, FTD can take up to 3.6 years to diagnose from symptoms to onset. Families report seeing up to 6 physicians before receiving a diagnosis. The most common misdiagnoses are Alzheimer's disease and depression. What to do if there are warning signs? What is involved in getting a clinical diagnosis of FTD? And I do have some sheets back there that you can grab on your way out that have some diagnostic criteria on them. So as awareness of the disease spreads and we better understand its pathology and criteria, diagnosis is improving. A comprehensive diagnostic exam can be challenging for the person diagnosed and their care partner, but a comprehensive neurological evaluation is necessary to make an accurate clinical diagnosis. A clinical diagnosis of FTD typically involves evaluation by an FTD specialist who is more often a neurologist, behavioral neurologist, or neuropsychologist. These are more likely to have experience in making an FTD diagnosis. Review of the person's medical history, a neurological exam, which includes a variety of neurological, neuropsychological, and imaging tests, a review of the changes in behavior, personality, language, and/or movement that has been observed and reported by a care partner, other families, or friends. A pathologist can look at the affected brain tissue after death to see what occurred in the specific portions of the brain and then make a definitive diagnosis. To which my parents said, "Ooh, no." And I said, I tried. So there is hope with current research and research participation. So that being said, I'm trying to do everything I can, even though my parents didn't want to participate much in any kind of, at all, in any kind of research, I still find it important. People say your mom must be proud of you, or would have been proud of you for being here and speaking up. No, she would have been horrified. But it's what I have to do because of the position I'm in. I'm able to reach all of you. Now all of you have a better idea. So that's why I'm here. Again, got to get back to my PowerPoint here. So right now, there are no FDA-approved treatments that impact the FTD disease process. Nothing proving yet that stops or slows or reverses the changes. Research is taking place now to confirm treatments to directly disrupt the FTD disease and to better address the symptoms. There are treatments that can be effective to manage the symptoms of FTD, off-label use of medications for symptoms, like to treat anxiety, depression, compulsive behaviors that are used in the general population, but not approved for specific use for those with FTD. Caregivers and care partners can better manage behavioral symptoms by learning new approaches to care and communication, like instead of arguing or reasoning, you can redirect a person to another activity, or if a task or activity is causing a disagreement, take a time out and try later. The structure and dependability of maintaining a schedule can also be helpful. Modifying the environment so as to reduce distractions is helpful. All of that sounds very obvious. It's kind of hard to deal with when you're in the heat of the moment, but they're great ideas. Also, getting some help and support is important. So medications can help certain behavioral symptoms. Some antidepressants may help with social disinhibited or impulsive behavior. Some medications may help with aggression or delusions. And specialty therapies like speech, occupational, and physical therapy can help symptom management and promote safety and independence. But they can't always, they're not going to reverse or improve, but they can help to maintain and, just keep a person stronger. Palliative care is specialized medical care for people facing serious illness, and a primary goal is prevention of illness-related distress, whether physical, spiritual, or psychological. Dementia-friendly spaces like churches, community centers, and others offer understanding and support to those with neurocognitive challenges, including those with FTD, although they are not always the best option for somebody who is younger, who has different symptoms. So trying to advocate for those services to better fit people with FTD is something that I feel is important. Research into the causes and genetics of FTD is very active, and the focus is the fact that many people are Research into the causes and genetics of FTD is a very active area of focus in the field. Because many people with FTD are undiagnosed or incorrectly diagnosed, exact data is not yet possible. So familial FTD, there are multiple studies since 2009 that have identified that approximately 40% of people with FTD have a family history of some type of dementia, a major psychiatric condition, or progressive changes in movement. Genetic FTD is a subset of familial FTD, and it is caused by a change or mutation in a single gene that was inherited from a parent. All known genetic forms of FTD are autosomal dominant, meaning that if one parent has an FTD-associated variant, the child has a 50% chance of inheriting it. While the majority of genetic FTD is caused by 3 genes, C9orf72, GRN, and MAPT, at least 9 more very rare variants are known to cause FTD, and more may be discovered. In most people diagnosed with FTD, it is a sporadic condition. There is no known family history of dementia or neurodegenerative disease. With a sporadic case of FTD, the risk of other family members developing FTD is no more or less than anyone in the general population. So, as far as genetic counseling, it's up to you. You still need to, it's very highly recommended that you talk to a genetic counselor before you go and just get tested. So the first step is to go to counseling, and then the next step is to actually get the testing. A genetic counselor can help you think through the benefits and risks of genetic testing and provide ways to talk to your family members about genetic testing, privacy concerns, and more. Individuals and families who are concerned about a genetic disease may benefit from a genetic consultation regardless of whether testing is available or desired. Many people seek information and coping strategies as much as test results. Genetic counseling does not always mean genetic testing. And the FTD ALS variant is highly genetic. And uncertainty of genetic status can lead to increased stress. If you have questions about your genetic status, see a genetic counselor. You don't need to undergo genetic testing to talk to a counselor. Sorry. All right. I am supposed to have a video in here. Here we go. If I haven't said it well enough, let's listen to somebody else. Is it up here? How do I play this? Lori, help me with my video. So I am going to play a video from a woman who is actually one of the co-founders of a nonprofit focusing on the MAPT genetic variant of FTD. One of the other co-founders lives in the Toledo area and is the woman whose husband sat on the balcony in Hawaii. So if I didn't say it well enough, I think she can kind of summarize what I am saying today.
This is the video.
Yeah.
Is it playing up as well?
I don't think so.
Yeah, should be.
So while they're doing that, I will continue on and say that she is with the Cure, MAPTFTD.org. Her name is Lindy Jacobs. And on her website, there is a link to this video and a New York Times article. And she mentions doing a PBS program. So she is very involved as well.
This video is inside of PowerPoint.
I'm not sure Lori should put it, it should be separate. You know what?
Stop the PowerPoint.
Oh, you can stop the PowerPoint if you need to. So right now, while we're waiting, I guess if anybody has some questions, we could do that because I really want you to see this video. Okay.
So a question on Zoom is there a genetic counselor working at or with Direction Home?
Not that I know of. I'm not presenting this on behalf of Direction Home. So you could call the ADRC. I know that the one I spoke to was with the Cleveland Clinic. All the hospital systems, if you talk with your primary care doctor, they can make a referral to a genetic counselor.
We may have to send out that video later. See if I can just go straight to YouTube for it.
Okay.
That work okay for you?
Yeah, because I have the. Does anybody else have any questions while we're waiting?
Is FTD like quickly progressing disease, or does it progress slowly?
It depends on the person. So oftentimes it can, the FTD ALS variant is obviously very quick. Um, some of the other variants are slower, but it depends on also what kind of impacts it is having on your life. So if you are, it could impact your health, your ability to function. For example, with my own mother, it was probably sped up by the fact that she wasn't able to tell us that she was having issues. And the first thing that she was able to indicate that she had cancer was that she had a toilet full of blood. She probably could have said something a lot earlier, but by that point it had progressed. So, those kind of things happen, or people aren't taking care of themselves. They're, gaining a lot of weight. They don't have any impulse control, things like that that are impacting their health and their safety. They're doing impulsive things. They may get hurt, and that can, change the course of the disease. So, everybody's different in how quickly it progresses, but I believe the life expectation is like 7 years from diagnosis. So.
Hey, Judy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I just had a question about the research. Is there cooperation, but a lot of cooperation between the different, like with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's? My mom had Parkinson's, and a lot of the symptoms you're describing here line up with what she was dealing with. So I wonder, since there's like an overlap at times, is there cooperation between the different researchers about the different types of dementia?
There is definitely an attempt to get cooperation. Sometimes it's better than others. It kind of depends on which part of the country and which particular agency you're talking about. But in general, the AFTD, the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration, is making attempts by people like me, by their professional staff, in trying to reach out to these other organizations and find their place to be part of that research. So, and this is, okay, so this video is the young woman presenting at a genetic conference. And I don't need to say any more. Just, I think she summarizes well what I just said, much better than I did.
Hello, my name is Lindy Jacobs, and it's an honor to stand before you today to share my family's journey with FTD and shed some light as to what it means to be fighting for a future. Because I'm the future face of FTD, the humanity and heartbeat to the cells you study, and the target of tau therapies, a positive MAPT genetic carrier. How do I advance?
See, she has trouble
There we go. Dementia has been a household name in my family since the time that I was learning my first words. My grandmother started exhibiting symptoms of FTD in 1990. Because I was so young at the beginning of her symptoms, I was not aware of the whats and the whys. But I did notice the vast difference between Grandma Bev and my other grandmother. Over the years, my grandma's disease progressed slowly, but when her abilities declined and her needs increased, my mother stepped in as her caregiver and voice when she no longer had one. We bore witness to the actions, values, and life lessons that can't be taught with words, only through demonstration. My grandmother passed away in 2006 after 16 years of this disease. Next slide. Shortly after my grandma's passing and my mother's 50th birthday, the changes started to stir within my mother's brain in 2009. She started to silently struggle with language deficits, writing errors, and changes in sleeping habits. She sought medical attention with her primary care physician for these whispers of symptoms, who determined them as menopausal and stress-induced. I wish I could say her story was one of simplicity because of the known family history, but it was far from that. It was treacherous, riddled with guilt, embarrassing, isolating, traumatizing, like trying to fight a forest fire with a bucket of water. To tell you all the details of my mom's journey would take hours, so instead I'll present to you the data from her journey with FTD in numbers. It took 8 years to receive an FTD diagnosis for my mom despite the family history. 5 doctors sought to gain a diagnosis, 3 neurologists to accurately diagnose FTD, 3 seemingly normal MRIs despite FTD changes, 1 positive genetic marker identified for MAPT, 50-50 odds of passing along the gene to myself and my sisters. 17 attempts at employment on her resume from 2012 to 2017. $200,000 spent in compulsive spending in the first 5 years of symptoms. 1 year with no income, waiting for SSDI to kick in due to incorrect paperwork given by the social worker. 2 jobs I resigned from to focus on the care for my mother. 1 day per week of lost wages for myself to dedicate towards this care. 0 is the number of skilled nursing facility options because of her age, cost, and FTD diagnosis. 4 known events of financial exploitation and roughly $4,000 spent per year on life and long-term care insurance to pay for my future FTD care. 3 trespassing notices, 4 shoplifting violations, 3 times I bailed my mom from jail, 10 times I appeared in court on her behalf, 1 collect call taken from my mom as an inmate, 2 letters from jail, 1 mugshot, 3 court-ordered mental health evaluations, 2 different determinations of incompetency to stand trial. $295 is the cost to file for emergency guardianship. 4 different county evaluations for mental stability and resources. 0 is the amount of resources she qualified for due to age, assets, and diagnosis. 6 lawyers used throughout her journey with FTD. 36 total hours we received outside help, all within the last 6 weeks of her life, which was paid for out of pocket by our family. 25 years of her friendships discarded because they couldn't handle her change. 2 known sexual predators who exploited her. 100+ hours I've spent in therapy to work through the guilt, sadness, and anger that comes from having a parent with FTD. 98% documented penetrance of MAPT. 5 family members with an FTD diagnosis. 3 daughters with positive genetic test results for MAPT. 6 grandchildren who now have a 50% chance of inheritance. Insurmountable is the amount of fear possessed that my future would look like my mother's and my children will suffer as I did. In 2021, just 4 weeks after my mother passed away, I was presented with the voluntary opportunity to undergo my own genetic testing. With MAPT being autosomal dominant, it's essentially a genetic coin toss, which seems like such a flippant action. But knowing that my future was based on something so rudimentary like how the coin lands, it seemed irresponsible to not proceed with my own genetic testing. I was certain that this test would change me profoundly. However, I underestimated the actual impact it would have. I tested positive. During the discovery appointment, very few words surfaced as my entire world felt like it was imploding, like there wasn't room to breathe, and maybe, just maybe, this was someone else's results. The gutting pain and anguish of these results was deep and cutting. For fear of my future, but more so, what about my daughters? I just kept thinking, this doesn't end with me. I possibly gave this to them, almost like an infection. I determined in that moment of deep despair that I could let this news consume me, live in self-pity, allow the feeling of doom to overshadow during this period of waiting, or I could use this time to have self-awareness, to make modifiable changes, to use my voice now to advocate for myself and my children, and to put myself in the research pathway. I always think, how different would my mom have lived if she had this foresight? After I ripped off the genetic testing Band-Aid, my sisters felt confident to undergo testing. Their tests looked like mine, all positive, which means that the next generation of our 6 children are all at risk for having this mutation. They will also have to endure the stressful and emotional process of genetic testing themselves, with the potential of having a future skewed by what that means for their life and the considerations they will have to make for their future relationships and life planning, while most likely navigating this future without us, their mothers. Essentially, the FTD story will continue in my family's futures generations until there is something to stop it. Since that appointment, I've immersed myself into FTD advocacy work while being as involved as I can. I've been a research participant in over 17 different studies, serve on 5 different FTD-related boards. I've been an invited speaker to multiple research conferences, submitted research abstracts, completed multiple interviews for applications, organizations, health articles, blog posts, research labs, pharmaceutical design panels, and podcasts. And I will be featured in a PBS documentary for dementia in 2025. Most recently, I have helped develop and co-found a nonprofit organization called CureMap-TFTD. CureMap-TFTD is a nonprofit organization created to mobilize families and raise awareness of the MAPT genetic mutation causing FTD, to assist a global network of families and to advocate for trials that will lead to a cure. We have created a centralized space for partners in the field to locate families impacted by MAPT and to work synergistically in a proactive approach to lead to a cure. Our organization currently has 20 family kindreds representing over 400 individuals around the world, guided by a prestigious scientific advisory board to hopefully overcome the hurdles in MAPT development and move progress forward. Knowing FTD is in my future, I'm most fearful that my children and husband will have to be caregivers in a flawed system, that they will experience isolation because my behaviors are too challenging, embarrassing, and inappropriate, endure the gripping heartache as they watch the best parts of what makes me, me, slip into someone unrecognizable. So I'm living my life with the power and vibrancy of a bright light, so that when FTD begins to steal and diminish and things become darkened, the memory of the brightness I once cast will provide them with the strength to endure when all they'll want to do is give up, that they will know how hard I fought to stay here. To my beautiful girls, I'm so sorry about what lies ahead of us. If I could, I would give anything to prevent and protect you both from the same hurt, anguish, and loss I endured because of FTD. It seems so unfair that we had to lose my mom, your Gaga, only to be facing that same potential loss of myself. Please know I'm fighting so hard for our future, to change our story. If there isn't a cure, treatment, or answer by the time my mind changes, I hope that the life we lived until then will be enough. One you can look back on and feel the deepest love and support, and that those memories provide you the comfort you need. Girls, we have but one life to live, and I promise that we're going to fully do so together until we can't. I'm so sorry for what you will have to endure. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, but I know you both have hearts as big as the sky, so I know you'll make it through. I've done everything in my power to make this journey easy for you logistically, but I can't ease the emotional pain of losing a mom. So, you'll live life as a family to the fullest, creating all the memories, going on adventures, and living with passion, purpose, and positivity. The life we create now, I hope to be so full, bursting at the seams, that it will sustain you during the moments that are hard, that you will always be able to remember me as I am right now. You two are my yesterdays, todays, and tomorrows, always. I love you, Mom. My hope is that I've shared some of that light with you all to guide you in your life-saving work, that when things get challenging or frustrating, that you'll be reminded of mine and my daughter's faces to surge forward. Without your work, my future is predetermined and dark. My time is limited and history will repeat itself. The time to act is now to ensure that MAPT FTD can no longer extinguish the light of this vibrant life. Thank you.
So hopefully she maybe said that better than I did. So if you don't think of me when you think of the other dementias, you can think of her. So I appreciate her being willing to speak up, and she is an example of why I am here. There's more to the PowerPoint. You can go to the aftd.org, and there are plenty of webinars. There's a free webinar every month. You can go there, get information, and learn more. Because if I didn't tell you enough today, you can go there and learn what you want to learn. So we did have, I do have a couple things related to Direction Home. I in the process of working on looking through some of the policies. I see we have a policy on dementia, which refers to making referrals to the Alzheimer's Association. And I'm very happy to say that Karen and Mary over at the Alzheimer's Association have said when they think of FTD and the other dementias, they think of me, and they have sent some researchers my way, and I have sent them on to people like the co-founder of this group. So we can all make a difference. And I just thank you for having me here today. And this is the AFTD contact information, the helpline, register for newsletters. And again, if you want any more information, I can send you some stuff afterwards. And this is the CEU evaluation.
So again, if you're here in the room, and especially if you're getting CEUs, please do scan that code and fill out our evaluation for today's session. And as well, check that or scan the QR code to check out today as well. If anybody online has any questions, I can see the chat and can get them to Judy. And if anybody in here has questions, I can pass around the mic so our people on Zoom can hear us. And people on Zoom, I can also drop in the links for the evaluation so you can fill that out as well. But anybody with us right now that has a question? Oh. All right, I'm not seeing anything online, so I think you're good. All right, let's see what we got. Any luck accepting? It is.
Oh, good.
Okay. Evaluation is behaving now. But again, I can drop the link in the chat for it as well. So let me do that.
Judy, did you get genetic testing?
No. Because the variant that my mom has, first of all, there was no way she was getting genetic tested. So not knowing if she has the gene. But also there's no family history and her variant is not likely genetic. And so we didn't do the genetic, I mean, I could always go back and do it, but I did do genetic counseling. And I will say, when I went to the genetic counselor, did it online, but the first thing she said is, you do realize that there is a strong connection between ALS and FTD. And so that's what she started out with. Because there is a link between the behavioral variant. So that one is very, very strong. The people that I know that have multiple family members with ALS, behavioral variant. So my sister and I didn't end up getting tested. But again, you have to think about things when you go and get the genetic tests, because I was at a group last year and the one woman said that she got tested and she was negative, and she broke out in tears and she said, but my sister's tested positive. Or you have people that get tested and then their family members don't want to know, or they get upset with you because they didn't want to know and now they know about you. So there's a lot to think about with that testing. But some of the research studies do require you to be tested. You don't have to get the results though. But in order to participate in some studies, you either need to be tested or you need to be positive, because depending on what they're looking at. So there is a lot of research out there. I actually talked with the CEO and a clerical person from a Danish pharmaceutical company a few weeks ago, because they're just looking to find out, experiences from people with FTD and their families, and what would be some barriers to participating in research and things. So I'm having the opportunity to, talk with different people. All of us ambassadors and volunteers kind of tell each other about, this person's interested in hearing from people. So like I said, Mary from the Alzheimer's Association here in Northeast Ohio had contacted me because somebody's doing a research study at Case and they wanted to talk to people. And she said, I automatically thought of you. So, and then I told some other people about it. So it's just word of mouth and speaking up. And, my main thing is either personally, if you know somebody who is having symptoms and you're concerned, talk with the doctor. And when you hear the other dementias, if you are doing any kind of advocacy work, the Older Americans Act, a lot of the Alzheimer's acts that we advocate here for, we advocate for here at the agency. Just keep in mind that when we're saying we advocate for people to get better dementia care, we need to understand what we're saying. We need to understand that there are other kinds of dementia that may not always be with the older population. So that's kind of a soapbox I'm on, because I'm guilty myself of not really equating that there are other kinds of dementia that just don't fit into the mold. And, as you can see from the video I showed you, that's not grandma forgetting her keys. That's a very different situation. It's hard when grandma has dementia. It's a difficult disease. It's hard to make decisions, but it's really hard when you're 30 years old and you know that this is going to happen to you if something doesn't change. So.
For you, it's good that you volunteer with pharmaceutical companies, because they always need patients. Pharmaceutical companies always look for patients to test their new products.
Right.
Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3.
Right. And I also I started participating in the Cleveland Clinic brain study. So anything that you can do to help promote science, I think, to me is important. Everybody wants to know, what can you do to prevent things, or what can I, how do I know this, or how do I, you want to research things. We don't know all of that stuff except for the people that have participated in that research. So
I just wondered, did you say your mother never lost her her memory?
it was really hard to tell because she couldn't speak. She lost her ability to speak gradually, to the point where the last few months she didn't even try to say anything. But it wasn't a memory thing. She could still cook, she could still clean, she could still make her way to the store and back on foot. One time, very late in the diagnosis, she was at the memory care, and we thought she was transitioning, into death, and she had been not responsive for a while, and then she woke up and sat up and went and did her hair and fumed out the STNA with her hairspray. She could still do all that stuff. At one point, they gave her a coloring page at the assisted living and activities, which she didn't normally participate in. And she wrote her name on it, and she wrote medical. Like she thought she was there in a hospital. So it's hard to tell what she was thinking and what she knew, because she couldn't communicate it. And we take for granted the ability to speak and to understand. And that's why I say you can't use a communication board. People think, okay, oh, they can't speak, so it's the whole language, where she lost her understanding of even what pointing to something meant, because that was a communication. So, but it was not about it. The problems that she had was not related to the fact that she couldn't remember things. Oh, does he?
I can't, he knows everything. And
Mhm.
so I can't, do finances. I can't.
Yes.
I can't do things that he can't trace.
Yes.
I just wonder how long that goes.
Well, yeah. Well, I will tell you that my mother, she worked at the Firestone Bank, Chase Bank, Bank One in Barberton for her whole career. She retired at 55, which I have determined I am not going to do and did not do, because I am 55. And I think I can't imagine. But she still controlled the money. She still knew the bills. Now, in hindsight, looking at the check register, she was scribbling things out and messing things up. She had little papers with stuff written, but she knew. And one of the last things was that water bill. And she went so far, my dad got it to be where it was auto deducted from the account, but she went so far as to be upset that she didn't know that it was paid. And she looked up the address and wrote it on an envelope and put a $100 check in there and sent it to the water department. And so she still was not going to let my dad handle that stuff. And she was so frustrated. So it's a very different disease. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for joining us in person. The people who are still with us on Zoom, thank you so much. Again, I will put out the links to the evaluation, so you have that and some other resources that our in-person folks here have. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email me. My email address is lsmith, smith, @dhad.org. Stay tuned to our website for our upcoming Caregiver Noontime Knowledge events. Thank you.